Hello Legion, this is Hadrian, thank you for being here. Let's continue going over Stellaris patch 1.3, codenamed Heinlein. There's so much to cover that I've split this project into 2 videos. This is video number 2. In the last video, I discussed some of the Stellaris-specific gameplay changes coming in the Heinlein patch. The changes in Heinlein can be separated, really, into 2 broad categories, which are core gameplay and 4X gameplay changes. In thinking of core gameplay, think about the features that are more unique to Stellaris. Core gameplay changes are changes to the Stellaris-specific formula. In thinking of 4X gameplay, think about the things Stellaris does that most sci-fi 4X titles do in one way or another. 4X gameplay changes are improvements to these features, but both categories are full of impressive new features and changes in this latest patch. In this video, I'll be covering 4X gameplay changes. To reiterate, I want to emphasize that this is a huge patch with a ton of changes, so I'm going to be covering the content in quick summary format. This also means that some of the smaller details might be missing, or that new details not covered in the developer diaries may not be present. As with the first video, I'll begin with the changes that will be arriving free for all players, and I'll wrap up with the paid features you'll be able to get with the Leviathans expansion. Heinlein has completely rewritten the book and repurposed each class of ship in Stellaris. Corvettes are agile, low-armor aggressors now that can use torpedoes to great effect against much larger ships. Destroyers are now primarily defensive ships, specifically coded to counter corvettes and their torpedoes with a high tracking stat bonus and point defense weaponry. Cruisers are frontline powerhouses with access to both torpedoes and strike craft, as well as more powerful armor. Battleships are rear-line capital ships designed for long-range support fire. They are heavily fortified and are the only ship class capable of mounting the brand new extra-large weapons. With these adjustments, Paradox aims to give each ship a more unique combat role. They've also revisited basic fleet formations to ensure that more vulnerable ships don't lead the charge every time. Also, keep your eye out if you find yourself engaged with a fallen or awakened fallen empire, because an even larger class of ship, for now accessible only to the fallen empires, has been added, and those are called Titans. Weapons themselves have also been significantly reworked in Heinlein. Paradox has added an entirely new stat called tracking, which I mentioned a moment ago. Each point of tracking diminishes the chance the target has to evade. This will force players to think more carefully about their ship designs, and the smaller the weapon, the better the tracking stat will be. That generally means that large weapons will be useful against large ships, but less so against smaller vessels capable of evading their salvo. Armor penetration has been retooled such that large weapons penetrate armor much more easily, and missiles can now be evaded, though it won't be easy to do. 4 new slots have also been introduced to add further nuance to ship creation. The aforementioned extra-large slot type, the torpedo slot, the auxiliary slot for support systems, and the point defense slot, which is handy when you want to design ships to withstand a volley of torpedoes. Utilities have also been revamped. Armor now reduces damage according to the size of the ship, meaning that one armor plate will be more effective for a smaller ship than for a larger one. Special utilities will have their own slot type, and a new utility type called Afterburners will help ensure specialized ships can catch up with fleeing cowards. Perhaps one of the most anticipated features of Heinlein is the expansion planner interface. The screen will allow you to see at a glance what nearby planets might be best to colonize, observe, or mine for resources. On the topic of habitability, in Heinlein, planet habitability types have been recategorized to cater more to players' intuition. 3 columns of 3 planet types each now exist in the game: dry, wet, and cold. Alpine and Savannah class planets have also been added in order to round out each group of 3. The groups, therefore, are continental, ocean, and tropical, desert, arid, and savanna, and tundra, arctic, and alpine. Habitability for your species' primary planet type will be 80%, as has been standard. Habitability for planets in your group, but not of your primary type, will be 60%, and habitability for planets outside your group will be 20%. This change will make it easier to know at a glance whether a world is habitable by your species. Additionally, there are no longer technologies required specifically to colonize planets. You'll have to use other means to increase the habitability of a given planet type to the new minimum of 30%, and you'll be able to colonize anywhere you want. And finally, the number of habitable worlds has been dramatically reduced to reflect a more realistic model of a living galaxy. Or rather, a mostly not living galaxy. Heinlein has split strategic resources into two major groups. Strategic resources, which have global benefits once you just find one of them, think luxury resources in Civilization, and local resources. Also, like in Civilization, spare strategic resources can be traded away as long as you have at least one. The benefits are yours. But with local resources, you will no longer be able to build resource-specialized buildings anywhere you want once you have the access to a certain number of strategic resources, even if you have just one. Local resources are truly local. They require the player to build their specialized building on the tile or in orbit of the planet where they are present. Another hotly anticipated feature of Heinlein is a classic strategy game feature. Rally points can now be created at planets or stars, or even on fleets themselves, in order to direct newly built ships to travel to player-determined locations depending on the needs of the moment. Rally points will work with the existing spaceport return mechanics so that ships will favor rally points when they're trying to return to a planet. But in the absence of rally points, the return and repair mechanics will work as they have in the past. Like space monsters, space pirates have also received an overhaul in Heinlein. Pirates now occupy their own class of space creature and occupy their own region of space from which they will strike out to harass player and AI empires until someone is strong enough to put a stop to their shenanigans. New galaxy setup options have also been added in Heinlein, allowing players to customize for the first time the maximum number of fallen empires in the game, including the ability to turn them off completely. If you're not a fan of the reduced number of habitable planets we just discussed, never fear. You can also change the chance of habitable planets appearing in each system. You can tweak whether advanced empires start near players or far away, the extent to which empires start the game in clusters, and whether or not endgame crises are even going to be a thing. On top of all this, Paradox has substantially retooled the graphics engine with subtle, not overdone bloom effects to add extra beauty to the planets and stars of Stellaris. And not to be outdone, they've also changed the basic sound effects drastically. Have a listen to the old sound effects, and then the new ones, while you check out some of the new graphics. You'll hear the difference. While aliens in Stellaris will always be grounded in the truly weird and truly alien when it comes to appearances, in order to give players interested in Star Trek-esque humanoid aliens something to enjoy, 4 new portrait types have been added as part of the free Humanoid Species Pack. And for those who purchase Leviathans, there are also the 5 new cuties in that portrait pack, in case you didn't feel already sadistic enough after blowing up space kittens. And as with any major patch, especially this one, there's even more nuance than what I've covered here. Now that I've completed my overview, check the description of this video for a link to the newly released patch notes for Heinlein. Watching this preview and then skimming the full notes should prepare you optimally to enjoy the new content coming our way. Thanks again to Wiz and the rest of the developers, as well as to Stellaris Wiki for making so much of this information readily available for players to ingest and streamers to cover. And thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time as I kick off a long-awaited series in Stellaris to celebrate the launch of the game's biggest patch yet, and to actually demonstrate all these new features I've been talking about. If you've enjoyed this preview, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along if you're not subscribed already. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in a bit.